Ho! What's up, demons and demonettes? Tis I, a Traxy Demon Queen, and it's been a while, but we're back at it. I've been distracted by PoE 2, but we're here today with a new video. But before we get into it, as always, toss a like and subscribe down below. And today we're going to be talking about my top five biggest issues with AFK Journey at the moment. They're not going to be in any particular order, except for the last one, which I think is the biggest or most problematic issue with the game in its current state. Alright, so I think we're going to talk about the hero stuff first, because everybody loves heroes. Heroes are exciting and fun. So if we look at our current roster, it is a rather large. We have a big roster. We got 8 new regular heroes this season and 2 new celestial hypogeans. So it looks like, other than last season, we're on track to get about 10 new heroes a season. That's a lot, right? So we're steadily increasing in the roster. So our roster is bloating out. And the problem with the roster is we're getting too many bad or mid heroes that don't really gel or add anything to the roster, right? They're not really good for multiple modes, or they're only good at modes that don't really yield much for rewards. So, like for instance, this season, we got Captain Speedo Hodgkin. Right now, he doesn't really, he's a fizz damage DP dealer. He does the ads. He has a debuff that may be decent come a Ravage round, but that's a very, very big speculation. I speculate more likely that he's going to do nothing, right? We had a Luca who came out mid-season, who is very mid-hero. He's the definition of mid. He isn't good, he isn't bad, but he doesn't really add anything to the roster that nobody else can really do. I mean, he's okay. He has a slight edge over Lucius in PvP content, because he does have the knockup and he is very tanky. So if you do run a stall team and you don't have like a Freyasto to run, he is not a bad option there. So I did get some use out of him in a Crystal Clash, where we do utilize the most heroes out of any of the game modes, but again, he didn't really add much. At the beginning of the season, right, we had Nara, who's really good, but she's only primarily used in push for her pull ability. If she didn't have that pull ability, she'd be pretty much useless there. And then she used to be a fairly decent in PvP, but again, quickly dropped off as we shifted in meta in Supreme Arena into more Mauler-based comps. We have Sonya, who's a great buffer. She's one of the standout heroes this season. You have Harak, who's easily one of the best heroes in the game. He dropped this season. That's fine. I don't have any issues with those 2 heroes. Those were really good drops. You have Dunlinger, who's really good, but he's very niche, and that's bad, especially for a Celestial Hypogean. These characters require a heavy investment. They should be good at multiple facets of the game, and not just be good at one, and situational at that. And then we have Sinbad, again, who's a great Dream Realm character, but again, he just kind of came out at the wrong time. Well, but we'll talk about that next. And then for the previous season, you know, we had Ludovic, who came out and he was like, and he's like, he's pretty decent this season, but again, he is only really good on 2 bosses. Not like last season, where we had Lily May, we had Freyasto, we had Taylene, we had Mikola. These are all impactful heroes on the game. They are really added something into multiple areas in the game. Lily May for Dream Realm, PvP. Mikola for Dream Realm, and to a lesser extent, PvP and stages. I mean, Freyasto, you see him everywhere. Taylene's another hero you see everywhere as well. So these are all big heroes that have been added. You had Omis, who was, you know, game breaking. He changed the meta for push stages. He's He's still used in Push Today. He can be used in Supreme Arena or Arena if you're running control teams. He's still really good there. He's not very good for Dream Realm, but he's an A tier hero. We don't expect that of A tier heroes, right? But the fact that he's very useful in 2 areas of the game, it's just that we had so many good heroes, right? We just had a couple misses, like Soren was, I think, a miss. Elsa was okay. I think she's had a little bit of drop off this season, because control for PvP has dropped off. Then you have Wenya. It's just like, who's primarily a PvP character. She has some uses in other areas in the game, but she's not overly all that exciting other than her character model, which is, she has a waifu power, right? So we go here, we can see her waifu power, right? So we had some really, really good heroes last season. In the preseason, you had Vala, who was really good early on in the game. When she dropped, she was very good in push at that time. She's an amazing arena hero. She was really good. Florabelle was someone who's also really good, but people didn't really realize how good she was until after, her banner kind of dropped off and they realized how strong she was in the next season. And that's typically how these things go. But yeah, it's too many heroes too soon. The double banners aren't that great. So speaking of double banners, we'll get to topic number 2. And I want to talk about the timing of the release of heroes. Now, it's off. I just put it like that. Sinbad is a really great pre-endless Dream Realm hero. The problem is he dropped at the end. He's someone that should have dropped at the beginning of the season. Instead, they went with Nara. It should have been Sinbad. He should have been first, so we get this awesome pre-endless Dream Realm character right off the bat. He has a good chance to shine. He's good. Everybody knows he's good, and then they're gonna want to pull for him. That's a bad business decision on the devs' part, and then that causes people to miss out on the banner on their part. That was my biggest gripe about this season. Atalian is another one. She dropped and was kind of in Endless last season, and then we get to the beginning of this season, right? And then everybody realized how good and imperative she was for pre-Endless. I mean, again, she wasn't a banner hero. She's a Celestial GM, so it's not as big of an issue. So we have that there, but yeah, it's sometimes I don't get why they release certain heroes at certain times. Like, oh, this hero is good for PvP. When would be a good time to release this hero? This hero is good in pre-endless, so we wanna make sure that like good pre-endless heroes get released. They should get released during the pre-endless cycle at the beginning of the season. Heroes that are better for endless Dream Realm mode should be released later in the season. Heroes that are good in push should be released earlier in the season, right? So we want to give, we should gear the season more to where we're at in the season, and that's how the cadency of heroes should be and how we should get them. We should also get less heroes that are better quality, because again, you're gonna have a lot of people, they're not gonna want to spend on a lot of bad heroes, and the more bad heroes we get, the less likely in kind that even people who are spending money on heroes are going to spend on those heroes. The other thing too is, don't drop 2 endless heroes back to back. They dropped Harak and Sonya almost a back to back, and the issue there I had is that Harak was such a good endless hero, is that it changes the meta in the span of like a week. We barely even got through one cycle, and the endless Dream Realm meta changed within the span of a week, right? So it's just like where it was stale and old for 2 months, all of a sudden, boom, boom, we get this big change towards the same point. Why not release Sonya, like maybe a month into Endless? You change the meta. You drop Harak another month later, you change the meta. Like when we got Luca, we could have gotten Sonya instead, right? Because they're 2 light bear heroes. You could have easily swapped their positioning in the pull order in which we got them on the banners, and it would have been better off overall. Right now I mentioned multiple game modes, and we're going to talk about Arena next. Now, this used to be one of my favorite game modes, but with the introduction of Thunlinger and some of the new heroes, there is no longer a meta comp. And just to take a look at this, I mean, we can take a look. It's basically these days what gives you the best shot of winning. But if we look at mine, I'm dealing with another Kraken in my dream realm, and I'm dealing with a whale, right? So we've got two bigger spenders that we're competing with for the most part, and to a lesser extent, we have, you know, a smaller whale here that we're dealing with, or maybe more like a dolphin at this point. But you can see, right? So I'm either defending against this person, or I have to defend against this person. I can't defend against both comps, right? Because if I run this comp, say this comp, my Freyasto, Harak, Dio comp is good against this person, or strong against the other person and gives them problems. This person runs this comp here that's been kind of popular, with Donaleka, Harak, Smokey, and Dio that I've seen pop up quite a bit. I destroy it regularly. Yeah, Arena has become a rock, paper, scissors. Now, the problem with it being rock, paper, scissors is maybe you can only defend against rock, right? So I run, and then I get beat by paper or scissors, right? So I run rock, I beat scissors, but I get beat by paper, that type of deal. So when you're at first place, right? So we'll see, like, if I beat second, I get 9 points. If I lose to second, I lose 12 points, right? So you just bleed off points. Now, we've been kind of stale in our arena. It's been kind of dead. So, and everybody at the top is our guild, right? So if we look at the top rankings, right, we have everybody from our guild. Valiants. A couple others that slipped in the mix, but they're lighter spenders, and then some other people, thanks to the refresh, which was really nice. But there's no advantage to defending in this game mode. You have none. If you're in first place, all you can do is slowly get bled out of first. You have no Paragon levels, don't help because you can beat everything on comp. So if you have anywhere between a mix of S plus to Paragon 2, you can take on these Paragon 4 teams and win. So it's not like Paragon levels really add that much. They've been kind of diminished since the beginning of the season, since Dun dropped, right? Because at the beginning of the season, I was running, what was it, Thorin, Dio, Taylene, Lily May, and Damien. And that team just nuked, right? It was a heavy burst team. It just burst everybody down. Nobody could touch it. It was just all, like, almost all P4. Nobody could touch it. It just burned everybody down. It just nuked everybody. Dun comes out, orders the ults. Nuke teams rely heavily on ulting. So now you're in trouble. So now you have to run, now you try running Dun, and maybe you team him up with Dio or Harak or the Taylene, right? To get one nuker out there, I usually go with maybe like a Harak and then maybe like a Dio. I stopped using Dio as he's intended to be used quite a while ago. I don't worry about getting him his Nectar stacks, especially if I run him with a Dun comp, because I basically just want him there for his shred, right? He does a ton, and I mean a ton of damage, even if we have him off, right? So say if I go, like, say if I just pick somebody, we'll just pick someone at random, right? We'll just pick Doggo here, number 6, right? We're not going to really affect the score, right? So we have this is kind of like one of the teams I like. I use this team to counter another team that I often see that's very similar to this team. So it's a Scar team and a Harak team, so it's kind of stallish. So it's kind of relying on delay. We could probably drop her. We can drop him. We'll sub in Smokey. I've been running Smokey more lately. He's been really good. But if we run Dun, right? So we can put Dun here. We can put like Harak here. We could probably just move it up like this, right? Do something more like this, right? This is probably a little bit of a better formation. Now, the idea here is we're going to use Dun to shred all of the heroes without any ults, because not done, Dio. Dio does a ton of damage even without ulting. His ult is just the icing on the cake. This is why he's such a strong offensive hero. I don't use him on defense as much. I cycle through 4 or 5 different high-end defenses on my side, but as you can see, we're almost all P4 at this point, P3 with what we're running. Anybody that I'm using in arena other than maybe a Tassie at this point is going to be at least Paragon 3. We'll get her up there eventually, but we'll see it in action here, right? So Dio just shreds, and when you run Dun, always give Harak the Dun shield, right? So if we look at the damage, you could see Dio, he just shredded. So I mean, we can still dominate the other smaller accounts. That's not a problem, right? So if we're going you know, against somebody with a 47k or less, I mean, even him 50k, 51k, he just beat me on comp one time, but you only have these two to really worry about. So yeah, it's really just kind of frustrating. It's like at some point I'll get knocked down to number 2, and then I'll just have to farm my way back up to number 1. But without a meta, there's no real point here. Alright, so we're gonna go to number 3. So speaking of content and events, we're going to talk about the droughts. Yes, the droughts. There's been a lot of droughts as of late, especially during this season. Alright, we've had a lot of event droughts. Now, you have Titan River, which is up for a week, and that's more than enough time. As you can see, I cracked the meta pretty much day 1. Somebody made a tweak, but nobody else was really working on the meta. The mode was solved within 3 hours. It was posted in the community. I posted a video that I had to repost because issues. But you see, the event's over. Oh, lickety split, right? So you're not really getting much out of this event. So it's pretty much we're locking in, doing our dailies, and we're done for 15 minutes, unless you're trying to push stages, and then you're stuck on stages because you're at a high point, and they can be rather difficult at that point. So there's just not enough events going on. There should always be some, I want to say, active event that's out in the world to do during any given week, right? So we should have, like, fishing is nice. Fishing should always be up. It can last a month. You want to make it last a month? Have it last a month. Fishing is something that should always be up. Crystal Clash should be on a cycle. We should get it once a month. It shouldn't be 10 days. It should only last a week. That's the other thing, is some of these events go on too long. They just drag and drag and drag. The perfect example is, right, we go to battle drills. Everybody's, I think, kind of sick of battle drills at this point. They're stale. They don't give much in the way of rewards. And they go on forever, right? They last like 10 days. That's 5 days too long. Probably 3 days too long. You want to have it up for a week, do it for a week, make it more rewarding, right? So they could certainly add things in. They could make game modes more rewarding, add weight to other game modes other than just Dream Realm, right? Because Dream Realm is rewarding on its own because, again, it's the only place that we can get the Temporal Essence outside of the shop, right? So we can get Twilight Essence. You get that from Dream Realm, you get that from Supreme Arena, you get that from Arena, and you get that from a lot of the weekly events. But the problem is the weekly events are over so quick, it just doesn't matter. Now, we do get the Heroic Gauntlet, but again, that's been coming for a week now. That takes forever. Arcane Lab events, we got another one coming up soon, it looks like. Right, it's just that this has been nothing for like 2 weeks, right? We don't have an event. Oh, I'm already in the middle of a run, but you get the idea. There's no event here. They brought back a Guild Supremacy. Again, this is hit or miss because, again, you just log in, you do your Dream Realm, you do an Arena, you have 3 people do honor duel, and you have 3 people do a lab. Just a floor and labs, and you're good, right? So we just go here. So it's basically just doing that, and then maybe trying to get everybody to rank, or enough people to rank for the reward, for the extra points, right? It would go to the rankings, right? So you want to get people to rank in Supreme Arena. That's usually not a problem. That's daily. Dream Realms daily. Arcane Labs is weekly, right? So you just get ranked weekly. You get points, and you just get ranked weekly. Honor Duel, for me, I just, hey, I did it. I just sit there. I just let my score sit. I got to the top 500, so I can add. So we get the maximum of 12 to add in the 100 passes. For Arcane Labs, I just try to place in the top 500. You can usually just clear floor 15, and you're good there. That's all you really need to do. For that one, a Dream Realm, obviously, you just want to get. I mean, you just need to rank. Essentially, just rank. I mean, on our district or our server, it's very, very easy. On our district, it's very, very easy. It's not a very highly populated district. Supreme Arena is kind of the same way, so it's very easy to get those, right? So, but again, it's kind of just like, okay, I do 1.8 trillion plus to the boss, so 3 people hit the boss is dead, and then you're back to waiting. It's kind of a blah. Clash Fronts was interesting. It definitely needed some work, but they never reworked it. We had it for a while, it dropped, and we haven't gotten it back since. We kind of go through these big content droughts that causes people to get bored and quit the game. It's not as bad as last season, where we were losing like 3 to 4 people in between each battle draw. We just lost 2 people recently. So it's kind of like calmed down, but our server's slowly bleeding off. It's bad. We need more content. We need to have a content cycle. Like I said, there should always be something to do out in the world. They need more world-based events. Maybe if the game takes, I get it, it takes maybe 15 minutes a day. At this point, maybe you check in battle drills, maybe you push some stages, but we need some content. The game, maybe if it takes like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, I think maybe like if you require like an hour or 2 a day to do everything, if there were optional events like Crystal Clash type event. I know we have some new events coming in Season 3, but we definitely need more events. We need more ways to do proxy battle. The Titan Reaver helps, and it's nice, but it gets old quick. Alright, and that's going to bring us to our 5th issue, which is the biggest issue I have with the game today, and that is RNG. And we can't talk about RNG without talking about how it works from a programming perspective, or how it works in general, right? So a random number generator is supposed to work like the roll of a dice. So if you played like a Baldur's Gate 3, or if you've ever played like a Dungeons and Dragons, and you have the dice there in front of you, or heck, if you've ever even played like craps or roulette or anything at the casino, right? You know all about random numbers and how that is ideally supposed to work. The best idea or ideal of it I can give is that you take a d20, you roll your d20, or you take a die, or whatever die, right? You give it a roll, and it bounces all over the place, and it generates a random number, right? That's a true random number. You have an equal percentage chance of getting each of the different numbers on that die. So in the case of a d20, 5%. So you have an equal chance of getting a 1 or a 20, right? Ideally. And then the luck comes involved in that. So that's how it works ideally. Now, in code, they cannot replicate that. So you can't replicate the roll of a die in pure form. in code. There's just no way to do it. So what computer programs do is they come up with an algorithm. The algorithm in this game is awful. I speculated that it's based off of the timestamp. That's why if you do your Dream Realm runs, never do skip back to back to back to back to back. You're going to, because if you do that, you may notice that you end up with a very similar score. Or if you run in a small window, you may notice that you're getting almost the same score over and over and over. That would indicate that their algorithm is based off a timestamp. And if you notice, I typically like to do my runs, or I get my best runs at or around 7 minutes before a reset, because I've pegged that as the time of the day where the RNG is kind of in my favor, right? So you have these, that causes these wild swings, right? It's too big on in the game modes, right? So Dream Realm in particular, it's bad. You have some very wild swings. I don't know if I have any good examples here between comps on the same boss, right? So you have about 8 here. Here we ran it. There's a 17 billion. That's about 20-ish%. That's kind of crazy. I mean, we've been seeing, like, here's bad. That's 27 between, almost 27 in between there. That's bad. Lone gaze can be bad too. It's just that these builds are really bad sometimes. Crystal Beetle is very consistent. It's not a crit heavy build that we're running. It's, like I said, it's very consistent. It's all of the runs are within very close to each other. Orson, you know, he's not too bad, but you know, Stomper, he's RNG heavy. So we get some bosses that are like a crazy with RNG. Stomper is one of those ones, right? We have a 62, and then we have a high of like 79. So you can see we get these wild swings in between on these boss runs. It was worse at some points earlier in the season. It was over 1,000% on some of the bosses earlier in the season. Pre-endless can be nuts. It all depends if the boss crits you or not, or if you crit the boss or not. One way I would solve that is just to remove crits off bosses. Bosses can't crit you. That should prevent heroes from dying as easily. Maybe they just have a fixed damage rather than a damage range, or they narrow the damage range, because it's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to, oh, I do a run, because we have a limited number of runs, right? So you do a run, X hero dies at the wrong time because they get crit by the boss, and it's essentially RNG at that point. You know, oh, this hero dies, I don't want them to die. They die 9 times out of 10. That one time, I do get it. Maybe I don't even get that one time. So my score is really low. It's just really bad game design for the RNG. It's just awful in Dream Realm. And in stages, it's not much better. I mean, it can be to the determinant of why you complete a stage or not. That's why I give up stages. I just gave up on stages where I saw Igor. I'm just like, I don't push as hard. I don't try as hard this season just because I'm reliant on RNG, right? Their manual is there. Yes, you can still manual to some degree, but now it's more of I need to manual. I need to time the ults at the right time, but I also need the RNG. So once you combine RNG plus skill, then that makes it feel really bad, because then you're sinking a lot of time into these stages and not to pass them. You're not really getting a reward, so the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? So we don't want to do that. So we just do auto progress. I mean, I'm not gonna waste. I value my time too much to spend it doing something on stages where it's gonna take an awful lot of time, and I'm not going to get a reward. All right. Then we can talk about, again, it extends into Arena, and we talked about it because it's a dead mode, but, I mean, if you look at Toxie here, she literally ran the same comp against me multiple, or, you know, she didn't, she tried a, different comp. Nope, there's the same comp. same comp, different comp. Right? So she ran the same comp against me, or different comp, the same 2 comps, we'll say. One time she wins, one time she loses. It's awful, because sometimes, like, you'll beat them. I have it here earlier. I have an example, like, I don't know if I still have the example. She beat me a ton of times, right? So she beats me once, right? Then she runs the same comp, and then beats me 5-6 times in a row, and that's because she got the right RNG window. So it's too big of an effect there. How do they fix that for PvP? They need to tone down the RNG some there. Make it. I know I just talked about Arena and how it's all messed up anyway. I don't know if it's even worth fixing at this point. It's just they don't do anything for a defender. Maybe if you're on defense, maybe you give the opponent a cooldown. Maybe they do it so they can't. They need to prevent the double hits, the multi hits in a row. That could change it, because ideally you would hit someone, you would get a cooldown, you wouldn't see that person in your queue again, or you wouldn't be able to hit them again or right away, right? So like, you hit somebody, they won't appear for you until you hit somebody else, that type of thing. So that means you have to hit different people. Like, you can't do back-to-back hits. So it's like, you hit someone, you hit somebody else, then you can go back to the first person. It could be just one skip, and in that time you would figure that the RNG coefficient would change, right? And that should help out and prevent people from getting that RNG window, that need that window to beat somebody and just crush them. And like I said, we just bleed points out. There's nothing to help out defenders in this game mode. You have no choice. Even if you P4 all of your heroes and run the best comp that gives you the best odds to win, there's no guarantee you're going to win, because somebody could just run a counter comp and they just run it at like P2, maybe P3 in that mix. But realistically, you just need a couple heroes at S+, and a couple heroes anywhere between Paragon 1 and Paragon 2 to take on Paragon 4 comps. So the RNG really just doesn't help in this area. You see it again, I've seen it in Supreme Arena. It's not as bad in Supreme Arena, I will say, but it's more prevalent in boss modes. You see it in battle drills. Battle drills are awful for RNG. You do anywhere, like, you should see some of the windows, and then like you factor in the whole comp of Secluded Island on the last boss, where if you got your heroes, they're too strong, you may do 30 billion damage, or you may do 250 billion damage, right? And it depends on like the strength of your heroes and just RNG. So it depends. If like your heroes kill each other off, you're going to do obviously less damage, but if somehow they manage to not kill each other off, then you can do incredible damage. And I mean, Secluded Island is the perfect example. Golem has it, some of the bosses here have it, some of the other sub bosses have it there. You're going to see it in Ravaged Realm. We see it on Guild Supremacy's pretty consistent, I would say. It's one of the few ones that doesn't really have an RNG window. Like, I can hit it, and I know, oh, I expect to do 1.6 trillion, or I expect to do 1.8 trillion damage, right, on the boss with the current meta comp. And it's usually pretty consistent, right? It scales up a little bit each time. So I mean, at the start, I did 1.6, then the next level I got into was maybe like 2 later, I did 1.7, and then maybe like the next one I do 1.8, and then, you know, it slowly increases because the levels increase. That's fine, that's consistent, that's the more of the type of trend I would expect to see, especially since we're only running the boss one time. We don't get multiple attempts on the boss, so we can't really run for RNG there or do really any effective testing. That's a completely separate issue, but that's not as big as the others. So RNG just accounts for too much in the game. It's too much of a factor, right? You pay to win the game. That's why I joke the game is actually pay to lose. Because you are still at the mercy of RNG. I'm typically someone who does not have the best luck in the world, I just used my knowledge of coding that I have and other things just to kind of figure out some of the best times to run. I typically run out multiple times during the day. I understand that maybe you're busy during the day. You can't do that. Not everybody's going to have the ability to do that or the opportunity to do that in like a dream realm, to run multiple times throughout the day to find those peak times. Maybe you hit it here, boom. But I typically hit it multiple times throughout the day, and then that 7-minute window before reset, right? So, because I know that 7-minute window is fantastic. Now, we can also talk about the pity pulling. I mean, this is because maybe it's on the more on the monetary side of things, but at least when it's been coming to heroes of this season, I noticed I've been getting full pity much more, not as many double pulls, like no triple pulls. Now, I haven't really been pulling, and that goes back to hero cadency because we don't have an A tier Graveborn. They really messed up on this one. So, I mean, it's really, hey, it's been good for my wallet because I don't want to pull off Wishlist. I don't want to pull off Epic Hero Recruit because now I have this situation, right? Max. I have to wait till another A tier here. Graveborn hero drops to pull again. But with how they diminished Paragon levels, I'm really not inclined to spend to pull anyway, to pull everybody to Paragon 4. Stargaze it feels even worse because these heroes cost so much. I pulled Harak, I pitied him all the way to Paragon 2. Luckily, I just had a ton of mats built up from buying those Stargaze bundles early in the season that I didn't really use. Yes, I pulled Dun, and yes, I spent a little bit to pull Dun to P3. After that, I pulled Frasto from P2 to P4, right? But it was kind of pretty much almost all pity. Now Harak P3 to P4 was a little bit better. I managed to do it on 240 pulls. Maybe it was... No, I think it was... I pulled them... I got a lot of double pulls. So it's hit or miss. It's not very exciting, especially early on. Maybe below Paragon level, we could change the numbers a little bit just to help out the lower spenders. And I know that's going to wreak havoc on a lot of other areas of the game. But make it so, you know, maybe you... The rates stay the same for the Paragons. Maybe they're a little bit better prior to Paragon, and you could just link it to the heroes. I think it would just help out the game in general. That way people could at least get the heroes and use the heroes, and then the whales and the krakens that want to come in and build the Paragon levels and build Paragon 4, they can do it, right? They're gonna do it anyway. You're just gonna help out other people. Maybe you'll get the light spenders to spend a little bit more because now they know they have better odds of pulling these heroes and maybe not having to spend as much or the resources. That's just an idea. And yeah, speaking of whaling, since this was kind of specific to me and I know this is already going on quite a bit, but I got a lot to say on these events. This is going to be a bonus one just geared towards whales. I am tired of the counter a whale mentality of this season. It has been awful. Secluded Island was terrible. I beefed up Cassidy to +20. She blew up my whole team. That sucked. I have no way to reduce power. On Lone Gaze, one of the strategies earlier in the season in pre-endless before Iraq dropped was to have a Rainer be eaten. I +20'd my Rainer. I have no way to decrease his power. He wouldn't die, therefore I could never get the highest parse. The slime boss, he was kind of the same way. My team was too strong. I killed the ads too fast. I have no way to decrease my power. So I had too much downtime. There was like a break point where if you were too strong, you wouldn't get the highest parse. I ended up in 4th place. That is not the goal of my account. That's not why I spend on the account. It's not to get 4th place. It's to win. I want to be ideally first, if not first, top 3. That's why I spend on the account, right? So it's just like anti-whale tactics. Paragon 4 just dropped off the face of the planet when Dun dropped because, like I said, Dun eliminated all alts. Well, he doesn't eliminate them, he just orders them, so he severely Rex burst teams, and he just ruined the meta in Arena, seriously devaluing Paragon levels there. I mean, Paragon 2 is probably where you're really good at this point. I mean, stages are stages, it doesn't really matter, but if you do get higher levels than the records, you should have an easier time. There are certain breakpoints where if you do out-level the records or you don't hit them at the ideal levels and you're too high, it shifts the other way and becomes much more difficult to beat. So they need to remove those types of mechanics. They need to go. If you can pay to win and you can buy power, that power should never be counterintuitive. That counterintuitive on too many other game modes. That's why I hate Secluded Island. I didn't really particularly care for the Slime Boss. I didn't like that factor on Alone Gaze in a Dream Realm. Again, because there's nothing I can do. I had a separate issue on Alone Gaze that was, I guess, just unique to Alone Gaze. When I was running the Harrock and I built Makola's Charms and I didn't build Smokey's Mythic Charms, you can't downgrade your charms. I found that out. Luckily, I had enough red dust. I could buy the cheap Mythic Charms for Smokey just to get him the HP bonus, and then that fixed that issue. But the counter power mechanics need to be removed from the game. They should not exist. It's something they need to test for, especially if they are gearing the game towards a pay-to-win model. You aren't paying to win, you're paying to lose. So you need to. So there's like a sweet spot. So if you spend more, you screwed up. If you spend the right amount and hit those right numbers, then that's fine. If you go over those numbers and you need to reduce those numbers, you need to be able to kind of like, I don't want to say you can remove the items from your heroes. I don't think you should be able to do that necessarily, but you need to downshift them, right? So it's like kind of similar into the case of the swap ticket, right? So I built up like a Hodgkin. Turned out he kind of sucks, so I just swapped off Sonya, but that's the only reason I built him that high for testing. Luckily, now we have Friendly Duel, so we don't need to build that high anymore. But those are my biggest gripes with the game, the top 5 that affects most players, and then the bonus one that's geared more towards whales and the high-end spenders who do support the game and are the driving force, and who Lilith really is catering to. So they need to do a better job of making sure they don't put in mechanics that counter the whale mechanics. I don't know about my other whales. I haven't really talked to them to see what they're going to do with their spending. Just the ones that I have talked to, I know they're going to cut down on their spending, just because the cadency of heroes and the quality of heroes, that's the biggest issue overall. I haven't really talked about the counter power mechanics, but hey, one of these days we'll get there. Anyway, that's it for this one. I know it's a long-winded, but I will catch you in the next one. Bye!